respond to the demands of the opposition, and that the only thing he can offer is a national dialogue to try to work out a roadmap for a peaceful and stable future of Yemen, something which has been rejected by the opposition.
This is Al Jazeera, and these are the stories making headlines. Anti-Gaddafi forces in Libya are calling for international help with their fight against the government. In the west of the country, close to the capital, Tripoli, the rebels have now lost control of AlJazeera, and we hear they have lost advantage in several other cities as well. Meanwhile, President Barack Obama says Washington and its allies are still considering a military response to the crisis in Libya, and Gulf Arab leaders have called for a UN-enforced no-fly zone. Meanwhile, Al Jazeera has learned that the British citizens released by Libyan rebels on Sunday were captured after an exchange of gunfire. 8 British nationals, including a diplomat and members of the special forces, were taken soon after they landed in eastern Libya. In Colombia, at least 23 employees working for Canada's Talisman Energy have been kidnapped. It happened in the eastern department of Vichada. Colombian troops have reportedly been sent to try to rescue the subcontractors, who are all Colombian. New videos emerged of the September 11th attacks in New York and the moment that one of the World Trade Center towers collapsed. This film was shot by a police helicopter that was hovering above the site.
It's gone! It's the whole tower!
17 minutes of footage shows the collapse of the North Tower and the smoke that filled the area. Only police helicopters were allowed in the airspace near Ground Zero at the time. And this footage was part of a package of evidence that New York City authorities handed over to a federal agency, which has been studying the collapse of the towers. It's unclear, though, how the video came to be posted online. In Western Canada, an explosion and a fire at a gas well has injured at least 14 people. It happened at a site near the town of Edson in the province of Alberta. The contractors were working at a facility owned and operated by Husky Energy. Egypt's caretaker prime minister says restoring security in the shortest possible time is the priority of his new government. Essam Sharaf spoke to journalists just hours after the new cabinet was sworn in. Meanwhile, Egypt's prosecutor has ordered the detention of 47 police officers suspected of burning documents at several state security headquarters. Meanwhile, in Cairo, thousands of Coptic Christians have been protesting, calling for an end to discrimination that they say they face as a minority group. Those are the headlines. The news continues after Riz Khan.
Hello and welcome. Why does maternal health remain the luxury of the world's most privileged, and what will it take to make motherhood safer for the world's poor? One of the 8 Millennium Development Goals set up in 2000 was aimed at reducing maternal mortality by 75%. But of all the targets set, making motherhood safer is lagging behind the others. Globally, the fight to reduce deaths related to childbirth and pregnancy has only met 20% of its goals. Today, 500,000 women die during pregnancy every year, and 9 million children in the developing world will die before their 5th birthday. That means that one pregnant mother and 18 children will die prematurely every minute of every day of every year. As International Women's Day marks its 100-year anniversary, we ask, what will it take to reduce the rate of maternal mortality around the world? Remember, you can send us your questions and comments through text messages or through email. I have 2 guests to discuss these issues. The first, as Grace magazine covers around the world for 20 years. But beyond the glamour of the fashion world, she's also a staunch advocate for maternal health. Christy Turlington-Burns founded Every Mother Counts and recently made the documentary No Woman, No Cry, which explores the challenges facing pregnant women living in 4 distinctly different parts of the world. Christy Turlington-Burns will tell us more about that as she joins us from New York. And here in the studio with me is Jill Sheffield, the founder and president of Women Deliver, an international organization that campaigns on maternal health and women's empowerment. I thank you both for being with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Christy, I'll start with you, please. Your concerns and awareness of the maternal health care issue came from your own experience with childbirth. Give us a brief idea of what happened. I know you explain it in your documentary, but just tell us what got you interested.
Sure. About 7 years ago, I delivered my first child, my daughter, and I had a perfect pregnancy, perfect delivery actually, until after that, and I started to suffer a postpartum hemorrhage, which I soon learned was the leading cause of maternal deaths worldwide. Postpartum hemorrhage in many countries, it's the leading cause. So it's sort of opened up a window into what was happening around the world, and I wanted to understand better why so many women were dying, and then when I learned that so many were preventable, I wanted to dig further and see what barriers were there to accessing care.
What were your first steps? How were you planning to make a difference?
Well, I started to travel a bit with the organization CARE. And when I first traveled with them to Central America in 2005, I was pregnant again with my second child. We spent some time in a small village where I was with other women who were pregnant or had just had their babies. And I looked around, having had the complication I had in New York City 7 years ago, I thought, what would have happened if I were here when I had this complication? And I realized that I probably would have died had I been in a situation where I was. There was no electricity, no water, no paved roads, no transport or emergency services available. So I decided that a film would probably be the best way to examine these barriers to care, and also to bring women around the world, to connect them to this universal experience of pregnancy and childbirth.
Right, let me bring in Jill Sheffield here, and good to have you with us too, Jill.
Thank you.
Now, when you look at all those issues that people are being constantly asked to support, why maternal health care? Why should that be such a prime concern?
Well, because women are basically the anchors to families all over the world. When you look at the parts of the world that have greatest difficulty with maternal health, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, they're basically agricultural societies, which mean that women also do most of the labor. Right. So when a woman dies, the entire family suffers. The younger children can die, often do die. And the family has difficulty, and that's being very kind about it. There are food issues, there are economic issues, and I think that's the key issue, is that women do bring incredible benefits to their families, communities, and frankly, to their nations, their economic benefits, but also their social benefits.
Jill, I'm going to put an email question we got from a viewer in Ethiopia, if I may. This one came from Sileshi Tuji in Addis Ababa, who says, given the enormity of the problem in developing and developed countries, I think the bulk of the work should be done by governments themselves by diverting funds from wasteful areas such as national security and the military. Now, of course, national security and military budgets apart, there are many issues, as I mentioned, that take attention, such as HIV, AIDS, polio, malaria, natural disasters. How can maternal health care issues grab a reasonable chunk of those funds then?
Well, I think there are two things. One is when we realize just how important women are to their countries, to the families and to their countries. The other interesting thing is, if we were to shore up our health systems